Hey guys, Novel Bushida here, welcome back to the channel, hope you guys are doing alright. And today we're going to be going over an article and a video from IGN of them talking to the Monster Hunter Wilds director, Tokuda, and also Fujioka, talking on the subject of how they decide which monsters they select to return for Monster Hunter games and monster creation. And yes, they even bring up Lagiacrus. So let's get into this. So the way IGN did this is a bit strange because the content in the video is pretty much the same from the article, but the article has a lot more information than the video. So we're going to mostly take from the article as there's a lot more context and richer information of how they approach monster selection. Now the article starts off with Tokuda actually explaining the process of monster creation in Monster Hunter, and I'm just going to read it out for you guys here. We consider what we want players to experience when facing major monsters like Ogveld, as well as the setting, ecosystems and so on of the world, unique to each title. We then think about the kind of monsters needed to do that. In a way, we start by putting puzzle pieces together, like if this monster exists in this place, how does the Ecological Pyramid work here? So this is pretty interesting. It seems as if Capcom come up with a setting first of the surrounding area, how they want the game to feel like and look like. For example, a game focused with underwater combat, or a game focused around over-exaggerated combat, or even a game more grounded to realism akin to the real world. Depending on what game they're dealing with and the ideals for the game, the new monsters created for that game will be a representative of that image. So what does that mean for Wilds? Well, if you see some of the monsters that we have so far, and they even hint this out later, a lot of the monsters are going to be focused around either the herd mechanic, they're going to be focused on harsh environments and surviving in a harsh world, and monsters that can adapt to different weather conditions from being harsh to being lighter at any given moment in time. And we can see this in some of the monsters they had so far. Like if you go down to the Scarlet Forest, as the rain starts to pour down and things start to flood there, the apex of that region is Ufduna, a monster who excels in water conditions, heavy water conditions. And we can see by the combat with that monster, the monster also shows how attuned he is to the elements of water. And then we can move to something like Raydao. You can see how crazy and how vibrant the Windward Plains is in the clemency phase, where lightning's striking, where everything's a bit hectic and crazy. Hence Raydao and his hectic nature of drastic flying moves, rolling out his wings a lot, heavy lightning bolts. He also represents and mirrors the state of the clemency phase in the Windward Plains. So it seems like it goes hand in hand with Capcom. They see the areas, what the vision is for this game, what they're trying to show to us, what kind of experience they want us to have on our journey throughout their games, and then create monsters to highlight those certain mechanics. And I would say they've done a pretty good job on it for the most part so far. So going on from there, I just want to move further down on this article to talk about Doshiguma, as Capcom do talk about him and how the conception around him fits really well into the herd mechanic, and that's why he was shown the way he is, he plays the way he is, as that was one of the systems they knew they wanted for this game. So let me just go ahead and read this one out here for you guys once again. Herds are one of the major concepts in Wilds, and so we created Doshiguma as a monster that lets players experience this element of the game. We were designing Doshiguma from a pre-early stage in part to help verify the way that packs move. Exactly as we said before, monsters are used to highlight certain mechanics of the game or to fit the environment itself, and in the realm of Doshiguma, he fits the herd mechanic very well, and they demonstrate quite well in his gameplay, as you've got the leader Doshiguma and many smaller ones that follow the leader, follow his control, follow his lead. Even when you separate them from the pack, they always want to come back to the big boy because he's the leader, he's the alpha of the pack, you know, you gotta look out for your alpha. What can I say? As we talked about before in the previous episode, talking about herd monsters and herd monsters I think would be great to return for Monster Hunter Wilds, it definitely seems like it's a mechanic that Capcom wants to add into, so we're gonna see a lot of monsters that add into that mechanic. And if you want to know some monsters I think would be great to return for this herd mechanic, check the description down below. It's an informative video going over many monsters over all the gens in Monster Hunter of monsters I think would be great to return for this game. Now let's just move back up a bit on the article as they talk about the proportion of new monsters versus old monsters and the fact that they don't really focus on it that much. Let's just read this out. We don't focus too much on the proportion or number of new versus old monsters. What's important at the end of the day is that the overall level design and order of monsters across the entire game, as well as the balance of ecological pyramids in each area. We take this multifaceted approach to decide which monsters to return. So after reading this, what do I think this means? Well, basically, it's not about the number of new or old monsters that return or are new to this game. It's more about what's right for the given location, the ecological pyramid as they talked about, and the feel of the game itself. For example, as we talked about before, herd monsters is a big push for this game. So if Capcom feel like there are a lot of monsters that would be great to fit in this game around that mechanic, they're gonna add them in because they fit the ideals they're trying to aim for. And then when it comes to apexes, the idea of different areas having a monster fitted to them, taking advantage of the clemency phase and the terrain itself, this type of idea would need new monsters to be designed specifically for each map. So in this case, each map is gonna have its own apex monster that is new to the game rather than using an old monster from a previous game. Now if you think about Monster Hunter World, each area did have an apex. They even point this out later on in the article, with the ancient forest having Rathalos, the wild spire waves having Diablos, and so on. Even though those are old monsters, they returned as apexes for their given area because at the time Capcom felt they fit the criteria that they needed for that particular zone. And apart from that, what does it mean for your favorite monster returning to Monster Hunter Wilds? Keep on wishing. If they feel the monster fits well into this game, the monster's gonna come back. And when it comes to Lagiacrus, they did bring him up, which we'll get into in the later portions of this video. And guys, here's gonna be a shameless plug. You know what, is it really a shameless plug? No, this is a Chad plug because I'm trying to help you guys get a discount with Monster Hunter Wilds for PC. I've teamed up with Fanatical, and Fanatical are selling you the game on a discount for Steam. Now, if you get it from Steam using this code down in the description, you support me and you're supporting yourself. Is there anything more Chad than that? Helping your boy out and helping yourself get a cheaper version of the game. It's a win-win. Where's the shame in that? But if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. I'd appreciate it if you leave a like down below and subscribe. And also leave a comment down below on what monster you would like to see return for Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm always interested to read your comments. Anyway, let's get back into the video. Now later on in the article, they talk about a concept that us fans haven't heard about before, or at least I haven't heard it, saying that there's certain monsters that they call handsome monsters. I'm just going to read this article so you can get more of an understanding of what I mean. I think part of a monster's creation can be an appearance that simply makes you think it looks cool, even among all the other unique monsters. We call these our handsome monsters. We believe that if we're able to have one of these cool monsters appear just at the right time, they'll stand out that much more as a unique character. We thought Raidal was in a great position for that, even during the design stage, and so we wanted it to be a cool monster. As Raidal's design was finalized before unveiled, even some of our own staff thought that it was the game's main monster until partway through development. That's just how handsome it is. However, once Arvel's design was finalized, the whole team was satisfied that they had found their flagship monster. Now there's a couple interesting things here. They point out Raidal as a character, a unique character. Now previously in the article, they should talk about how monsters are the main characters in Monster Hunter, as they are the pinnacle, the highlight, the intrigue that brings us closer to the series. We all have our favorite monster, we all have our most hated monster. And throughout the games, different monsters have different characteristics, different boss fights, armor, weapons. You build a relationship around the monsters. The monsters are more important than the NPCs in the world. Thus, the monsters themselves are the main characters of Monster Hunter. They build the stage and the foundation for us to keep on playing, and that's what keeps us coming back. Nice and unique monsters to keep us interested. And this handsome monster idea is pretty cool actually. Even coming back to the past, I can think of some monsters from previous games that would have fit into this archetype, such as Goshorag in Monster Hunter Rise. He was a fan favorite. I don't think anyone would have hated him being a flagship. He was an amazing monster with amazing moves. He was threatening, he was aggressive, and his design is so awesome. I don't know a single person who doesn't like Goshorag. Base Monster Hunter World, I can't think of too many monsters to be honest. Maybe you could say Anjanath, but honestly, personally can't consider him a handsome monster myself. But maybe if there's a monster in that game that you guys can think of being handsome, maybe Dodogama. Maybe the cute Dodogama is that monster for you in that game. Or in fact, Bazoogies. Bazoogies could be the handsome monster for Monster Hunter World, to be honest. He did light a spark in many hunters, literally, when it comes and dives into you and makes you caught in all your hunts. So yeah, he definitely left an impression in the base game. And of course, in Sunbreak, we have things such as Lunagoron, which is a cool looking monster, Garagol. Not as handsome as Goshorag, but still pretty good. So as you can see, in each game, they are definitely adding in more monsters, these handsome monsters. Not flagships, but they add into the experience overall in Monster Hunter, either in the difficulty or just remembrance of the fight itself. And I guess when it comes to Monster Hunter World and Anjanath, he was kind of a wall for many people when they were first getting into the game, so maybe he does fit that type of archetype of a monster, memorable not for being handsome or even cool at that fact, but a monster that left memories by his difficulty for newer players. So yeah, this concept is really nice, and I hope to see more of this as we go on into further games. We don't just need the flagship to be cool, we need more monsters to be cool, because it's just nice to have nice and interesting monsters throughout your playthrough, right? We don't need all the cool monsters just at the end. It's nice to have a little bit of interesting mechanics and fights as we're going through the games itself. It keeps us engaged. So I love this idea, Capcom. I really do. They also talk about the designing of the stages and how certain elements, such as the ore that's generated from Ray Dow, being used by the villagers to ward off monsters. Now, I'm not going to read this part out, but I'll show it on screen. It's very interesting to me, the little details in how the pyramid works, as they said, right? Ray Dow, the apex of the area, the ore that it creates is then used by the villagers to ward off other monsters as they're afraid of Ray Dow. As they see these ores, they think about Ray Dow. They know, I'm not going to go into that territory. I ain't going to mess with Ray Dow. He's the apex. I'm going to get fucked up. No one wants to get fucked up. So little Chachacabra, our little 1-star rank monster, he ain't gonna try to pull up on Ray Dow unless it's the infamous 12-star Chachacabra that I'm hoping we see one day in the full game, because that would be kind of crazy. I can't lie. I actually can't lie. And I'm sure if there's a 12-star Chachacabra, he's probably gonna pull up on Ray Dow and probably one-shot him. And then finally, they get on to returning monsters. And they first start talking about Kongolala, who was the first shown returning monster in this game. Well, to be honest, they say it's the first monster, but no, we actually saw Rathalos before we saw Kongolala. So that's actually a mistake on their part. Or maybe when they say the first, they mean the first that we're gonna encounter in the actual game itself, which I can get behind. And they have this to say on Kongolala. Kongolala is a monster with straightforward actions compared to the unique monsters of the Scarlet Forest that hunters will have faced so far, like Lagiacrus. It's easy to hit, and I think it ended up being perfectly placed for players to enjoy hunting as they make full use of what they've learned and the weapons they've created so far. So you know what, I get the statement, I get it. It's kind of sad, but basically what they're saying is they need monsters to be a punching bag. In the Windwood Plains, we have Chachacabra, and in the Scarlet Forest, we got Kongolala. So yeah, I'm sorry Kongolala, you're my boy, but you're gonna get hit up. You're gonna get beat up by everyone. You are the punching bag of the Scarlet Forest. It's in Capcom's words. That's what they said. He is gonna be lowest on the totem pole in that area, even Lola Bruna, who didn't seem that threatening, apparently is a better boxer than our boy Kongolala. So I'm sorry Kongolala, you've been relegated to that position. But to be honest, Kongolala has never really been a difficult monster. The main difficulty about him is obviously his stench mechanic, you know, when he farts on you and you can't use your items. He really highlights to hunters, definitely new hunters, the importance of preparation, because if you don't bring your cleansers, your deodorants to get rid of it, you're not able to use any items. That way he can slowly chip at you down and down until unfortunately you faint. So maybe he's gonna have more tricks in his bag in this game. Maybe Capcom are selling him short. I'm still rooting for him, alright? I'm still rooting for him. And if you're interested in seeing some gameplay for him, we also did a video on that too. It's a pretty fun hunt. They then also go on to say, when we have monsters appear, we're always conscious of not just trying to make them easy to understand for players new to Monster Hunter, but to also shock and delight fans of the series. I think tossing Kongolala out right there was just right for it. We announced it at the Tokyo Game Show, because we thought fans who know about Kongolala would enjoy that. Once we did, the reaction ended up being even bigger than we imagined. We talked later about how that must have been the greatest moment of Kongolala's life. Damn right. And this just shows Capcom is paying attention to fan reactions. We've seen it so far, right? We know them. They very clearly pay attention to their fans, what their fans want, what they don't like, what they love, and so on. They're paying attention online, they're paying attention to comments and videos. That's one of the big positives when it comes to Capcom as a development team. They actually care about their customers and what they think about their games, which I gotta say I really respect. They don't go on to talk about Lagiacrus and how about in the previous games, back in his introduction into the series, back in the first gen of Monster Hunter, he was known as a sensei to teach new players on how to play the game, preparing them for harder portions of the game. They go on to say that Lagiacrus being the teacher in this game is a bit difficult to have, as in each new game there are different monsters suited for the environment and the stages to fit that role of teaching players on the mechanics of that game. So in turn, it seems like Lagiacrus coming back was mainly to please the fans, and also the fact that there was a herd mechanic that existed for Lagiacrus in lore, but obviously back then they didn't have the mechanics in the actual game to make it work. So in Wilds, they can finally bring their passions into reality. So that's good to see. So finally, we can get into the information about Lagiacrus. Let's go. My third favorite monster in Monster Hunter. The interviewer asks, which monster comeback is most awaited out of those that haven't made an appearance yet in Wilds? And Tokuda goes on to say that would have to be Lagiacrus. Ever since World, people have been asking to bring Lagiacrus back no matter where in the world we go. It feels like we've been constantly asked since then. There really are a lot of fans both inside and outside of Japan who love Monster Hunter Tri. It's a memorable title for me as well. Listening to the fans, I get the sense that monsters like Lagiacrus and Brachydios enjoy a particularly deep-rooted popularity. Gomagala as well, as it seems like many people have a lasting love of monsters that featured on the cover art of a title. Boy, only if you knew that back in Monster Hunter 3U in the West, Azure Rathalos was on the cover of that game, and no one likes that mofo. Everyone hates him. Unfortunately, he breaks that logic. Tokuda then goes on to say, I'm one of the creators of Lagiacrus myself, so naturally have a deep attachment to it. I might even say that I want to put it into the game more than anyone. There are a lot of difficulties, such as the fact that we haven't had aquatic battles or actions ever since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, of course. But we've heard everyone's voice loud and clear, and I want fans to know that I want it to make an appearance just as much as anyone. So what does this mean for Lagiacrus? Does it mean Lagiacrus is coming back for Wilds? Well, it doesn't mean he's coming back for Wilds, and it doesn't mean he's not coming back for Wilds either. All it means is that Tokuda is listening. Monster Hunter in general, the developers are paying attention to the fans, and they well understand that Lagiacrus is one of the monsters that everyone wants to return more than anything. I think Lagiacrus is literally the only flagship, the only one that hasn't come back in Monster Hunter in the 5th gen. Well, there is one other, Gammoth, and I guess Bloodbath Diablos 2, but I guess you could say Bloodbath Diablos did come back in the form of Apex Diablos, but then I would have to cry because I don't want to make that connection ever again. So we're gonna skip past that and forget he exists in that game. Anyway, Gammoth and Lagiacrus, yes, those are the two flagships that haven't made a return in the new gens. So eventually they need to come back, right? Hell, even on the popularity list that the fans love the most and hype up, Lagiacrus was ranked number 3, which is an incredible feat when you think about it, as he wasn't even in the 5th gen. Every other monster, Zenoga, was in every game since his inception. Nergante in Monster Hunter World, the biggest selling game of Monster Hunter history. And then there's Lagiacrus, a monster that hasn't been in since Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, a game not many people even played anyway. And the fact that he's number 3 above monsters like Gormagala or Valstrax, that is crazy. That just shows how popular he is as a monster. Now, we've gone over this before, what I think about Lagiacrus, is he going to come back and so on, in many videos on the channel. Even though he's my 3rd favorite, coming behind 2 other monsters that most people who followed me for a while would know, and one day I will do an official video on that list, I promise. Even though he's my 3rd favorite, I don't want him for Wilds. I already said this, mainly for the reason my first game was Monster Hunter Tri. He was perfect in Monster Hunter Tri. Fighting Lagiacrus underwater was great. I loved underwater combat. Lance underwater combat was great. I main Lance. It was fun for me. I know it wasn't fun for everyone else. I don't know, I'm sorry. I didn't make the game mechanic. But what I can say is that it was good for me, and Lagiacrus was great in that game. And I feel like Lagiacrus loses his thunder outside of water. We saw it in Generations Ultimate. It was fine, but it still didn't live up to the thunder, the hype that it did in the previous games. One of the biggest issues in that game, in fact, hitting his shells on the back. Those shells on the back were pretty much impossible to break unless you were using aerial style, because they're so high up on his back. I think you needed at least 2 mounts, and then after that it was broken. Back in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, some of the best parts of fighting this monster was making your way around him to get to those weak spots so you can destroy them easier. The 3D element of that game, having the Z-axis because you're underwater, made it very enjoyable for me personally. Now, coming on to Monster Hunter Wilds, yes, there are monsters like Ufduna who do resemble a similar mechanic when it comes to Lagiacrus of playing with water, but also now on land. Maybe they could follow his example and use him as a stepping stone for Lagiacrus for this game, but personally, I think the monster that piloted underwater combat should return in the return of underwater combat. Tokuda himself even mentions aquatic battles and how important those were to Lagiacrus, and as a reason why it's difficult for Lagiacrus to return. So I'm thinking Capcom are also thinking that he's not going to return unless it's underwater combat. Now, if he does return in this game, I would be hyped, alright? I would be going crazy. I don't know any spoilers, and if you know any spoilers, don't put them down below, because I will delete your comment, alright? I don't take spoilers at all on this channel. I've already highlighted that. I've already told all my followers and subs here that any spoilers will get deleted. We don't deal with that here. But that aside, I don't know, I will get hyped as fuck if he does return, but just for my selfish love for Lagiacrus and underwater combat, I hope he doesn't return in this game and we get him in a future game where they decide to bring back underwater in a new and fantastic way for everyone to truly enjoy in Monster Hunter. Well guys, that's all I got for you today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit of a long one, but there was a lot of juicy information we had to go through. And I hope you enjoyed. You know, let me know what you think down below. Like, subscribe, comment down below. If you still haven't bought Monster Hunter Wilds and you plan on playing it on PC, check out the link on Fanatical. You can get it there, support me, support yourself, so we can play together. It'll be great. Later on today, I'm going to be farming Fatalis, so that's going to be fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So guys, I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.